Greetings, students. Today, I welcome you all to this week 8 video. So, in week 7, we have discussed about started with the data collection, unit 4, when we discussed the types of data. And today, in week 8, we'll be continuing with the same unit, discussing about the measurement and scaling techniques. Okay, so let me start sharing the screen for you. Yeah. So the module 4 data collection and the topics to be discussed are the basic scales like nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, ratio scale, and what are the criteria for a good measurement scale. And there are certain attitude measurement advanced scales like Likert scale, semantic differential scale, Thurston scale, and multi-dimensional scale, also called as MDS. So we'll be discussing these types of scales in this week. Okay, so let me start with measurement and scaling techniques. So as we all know, like if at all you are doing this any scientific experiment or in a lab setup, you have many instruments or scales or equipments to measure, to quantify. But in case of humanities or social science, we are basically dealing with the attitude, perceptions, opinions of people. So how to measure this attitude opinions? It is a tough task. Okay, so we have to assign some numbers, some symbols, okay, to characterize the objects, to characterize or to classify the objects and to identify them, to measure them. Ultimately, we need to quantify the data so that we can analyze the data easily to get our output. Okay, so in case of humanities, as I told you, we'll be using many measurement and scaling techniques, right, to measure the opinion, preferences, or attitude of the people. For example, here, take for example a scale from 1 to 100. So you want to locate the customers according to the characteristics, or you want to measure the attitude toward departmental stores. Okay, this is your topic. Now, how do you measure the attitude towards departmental stores? You don't have any equipment to measure, so we are forming a scale, coming out with a scale. Okay. Now, each respondent will be assigned a number from 1 to 100, indicating the degree of favorableness. So, 1 you will be labeling it as extremely unfavorable, and 100 you will be labeling it as extremely favorable. So within 1 to 100, and the consumers can give the ratings to the departmental stores. So this is how you can actually measure the attitude of the departmental stores. And from rating from 1 to 100, what we call is as a scale. Okay. Right. So basically, there are four types of scales, basic scales, or you can call it as primary scales. So as I told you during the topic, brief in the beginning. So the first basic scale is nominal scale. Okay. So this nominal scale is only used for labeling or classifying the objects based on certain characteristics. Okay, you are not ordering, putting them in order. You are not measuring the interval or the difference between each item, or you are not even ranking them or in certain order. This is only to basically classify the objects based on their some characteristics. Okay. For example, the university registration numbers, the USN numbers, what the students get. It is only just to label or classify the students for better identification. It doesn't mean like USN 1 is stands first and USN 60 stands last. No. It is only to classify the objects and to identify. So we are labeling these students by giving a USN number. Also the bus route numbers. Okay, it doesn't mean one is high or two is low. Only to classify. Okay, only to classify the items based on certain characteristics. So this is about nominal scale. Coming to ordinal scale, this scale is also called as ranking scale. Okay. So here the items of the options will be ranked based on the consumer's preference or perceptions or opinions, etc. Okay. So each option or will be assigned with some numbers so that the based on the customer preferences they will be ordering or ranking these items so that we'll be getting a rank. We'll get to know which stands first, which stands next, which is in second position, which is in third position, like that. For example, the respondent will be given a list of brands of toilet soap to be ranked. So based on the brand preference, whichever the customer likes, they'll be ranking them in the order. So we'll be giving them the rank order from 1 to 5. Okay. So if at all the customer puts a particular brand in first position, it means the preference is 1. So the brand stands in first place. For example, here you can see here Lux, Lyral, Synthol, Dove, Peers. Okay, there are a variety of brands available in the market. So you just produce the names in front of the respondent and ask them to rank in the order. If at all they place a particular brand in the first position, it means it stands for they are giving ranking them as 1. So this is called ordinal scale. Okay, so a ranking is possible in this particular scale. So this type of scales are also widely used in marketing survey. Okay. The next type is interval scale. So here it gives a difference between each parameter. Okay. So here the numerical equal distances on the scale represent equal values in the characteristics being measured. For example, suppose we want to measure the rating of a refrigerator on the interval scale. So it will appear as the following. You can see it on the slide. If you have a list of parameters identified related to a refrigerator. For example, brand name, price, service after sales. How many parameters you will be identifying related to refrigerator which you want to measure. So for each you will be giving an interval scale. Poor to good, high to low. Okay, like this, excellent to fair, poor. Like this you will be measuring and it gives an equal distance between each item. Okay. Right. So this is about interval scale. Next is the ratio scale. This is a very advanced and special kind of interval scale which has absolute zero, meaningful 0 point. So this scale, with this scale, length, weight, distance can be measured, and this is possible to say like how many times greater or smaller one object is being compared to other. Okay. So for example, sales this year for product A are twice the sales of the same product last year. So you have an absolute zero here in the ratio scale, most advanced type of scale where it usually measures the distance. Okay. This is the ratio scale. So these are the four basic types of scales which can be made use in the questionnaire. So next is scaling techniques. So when it comes to different techniques, scales we have studied basic scales. There are some advanced scaling techniques also which we'll be discussing. So usually can be classified as comparative scales and non-comparative scales. So under comparative, you'll be having paired comparison scales, rank order scale, constant sum scale, Q-sort scale. And in non-comparative scales, we have continuous rating and itemized rating scale. Okay. So under itemized rating scales, you will be learning Likert scale, SDS, and the MDS scales. Okay. So coming to comparative scaling techniques, this involves the direct comparison of the objects. Okay. So here the data must be interrupted in relative terms and only ordinal and rank order scales are used here. Okay, in comparative scaling, only interval and the rank order, ordinal or rank order properties. In this following, for example, in the following, which store do you think is better? So we'll give them a list of names of these stores. Okay, Big Bazaar, Food World, Total Mall, or Smart. Okay, so now we want to compare between each stores. Okay, so in non-comparative scale, what happens? Each object is scaled independently, but here in comparative scales, all together we'll be measuring them in an ordinal scale or a rank order properties. Okay. For example, if respondents asked to evaluate Coke on 1 to 6 preference scale, so 1 is not at all preferred and 6 is greatly preferred. This is independent of other brands. But in the previous example, here we are comparing between the different stores. So all of them are put together in the question. So this is called comparative scaling technique. Okay. So under this we have paired comparison scaling. So in this paired comparison scaling, Here, a respondent will be presented with two objects and asked to select one according to some criteria. So here also the data is obtained in ordinal in nature. Okay. So first we are going to present with 6 pairs of shampoo brands. For each pair, please indicate which one of the two brands of the shampoo in the pair would you prefer for personal use. Now you give them the questionnaire and record the responses. For example, Head and Shoulders, Clinic Plus, Pantene, like this. Okay, we are going to compare. Right. Next, rank ordering scale. So, in comparative scale technique, in which respondents are presented with several objects simultaneously and they are asked to order or rank them according to some criteria. Okay. So, here the ranking is possible. So, for example, if we ask the respondents to rank the various brands of toothpaste in order of their preferences, so there are various brands of toothpaste available. For example, Close-Up, Colgate, Pepsodent, Westwalk, so many others. You can give a list of brands of toothpaste to the customers or the respondents. So they begin by picking out the one brand that they like the most and assign it the number one. Okay, they'll name it as number one, and the least preferred will be ranked as four. Since we have used only four here, four brand names here, so you rank from one to four is possible. So we'll ask them, we'll give them a blank space where they can enter the rank. If at all they feel Colgate stands number one, they can give them rank one. If at all they say Pepsodent stands second, they can give Pepsodent as two. So rank ordering is possible in rank order scaling. Okay. So constant sum scaling. In constant sum scaling, the respondents will be allocated a constant sum of units, such as points among set of stimulus objects with respect to some criteria. Okay. So respondents may be asked to allocate 100 points to attributes of toilet soap in a way that reflect the importance they attach to each attribute. So if an attribute they feel it is unimportant, they'll assign 0. If an attribute twice as important as some other attribute, it will receive twice as many points. So the sum of all the points is 100. So hence the name is called constant sum. Sum means adding. Okay, constant sum scale. Q-sort, next type of scaling. Q-sort was developed to discriminate among a relatively large number of objects very quickly. Okay, so this technique uses the rank order procedure in which objects are sorted out into piles based on similarity using some criteria. Okay, so for example, respondents are given 100 attitude statements on individual cards and they are asked to place them into 11 piles. So 100 cards, they have to form 11 piles based on their preference. So most highly agreed with and least highly agreed with. So they'll be found. Most one first pile might stand for highly agreed, and the last 11th pile might stand for least agreed. Okay, so based on this, they form 11 piles out of 100 attitude statements. This is Q sorting. Coming to non-comparative scaling techniques, here, as I told you, here each item will be measured independently without being compared with the other brand. Okay? So here, whatever rating standard seems appropriate to them, they do not compare the object being rated either or another object to some specified standard. Okay. Under this, we have continuous rating scale. In continuous rating scale, it is also referred to as graphic rating scale. So respondents will rate the objects by placing a mark at the appropriate position on the line that runs from one extreme of the criterion variable to the other. So thus the respondents are not restricted to selecting from marks previously set by the researcher. You can see the statement below here. How would you rate Big Bazaar as a departmental store? Okay, so probably the worst, probably the best. Okay, and in the line they'll be giving the rating from 0 to 50. Okay, so they'll be marking either it as 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So this is continuous rating. Next, itemized rating scales. Okay, so in this itemized rating scale, or sometimes it is also called a summated scales. So respondents will be provided with scales that has number of brief descriptive associated with each category. You will have number of statements with items defined. Okay, so these categories will be ordered in terms of scale position, and the respondents are required to select the specified category that will best describe the object being rated. Okay. Among this itemized rating scale, we have the very advanced and most popularly used scale, Likert scale. Okay, the name goes after the person who has invented the scale. So Likert scale is also called as summative scale sometimes. So it is widely used rating scale, as I told you, which requires respondents to indicate the degree of agreement or degree of disagreement with a series of statements about the object. So typically what happens, each scale item will have 5 response categories from ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Okay, here in Likert scale, what happens? You will have a list of statements. So these statements are called as items. That is the reason this is called itemized rating scale. Okay, so each item will describe about a particular object. Okay, so you will have number of statements related to the object or related to your research problem. So each item will be rated against some scale. Okay, so that is Likert scale. Usually in Likert scale, we have 3-point scale, we have 5-point scale, we have 7-point most advanced. Okay, usually 5-point scale will be used in any of the questionnaires. What happens? You will have 5-point scale. Okay, so one item will be rated on 5 different categories. Okay, so starting from ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. In between, you can have like agree, neither agree nor disagree, disagree, and strongly disagree. Okay. For example, here in the slide you can see. Okay. So if you are asking the opinions about Spar hypermarket, okay. So you ask the respondents to indicate how strongly they agree or disagree with each of the following scales. Okay. So these the scale will be from 1 to 5. So this scale is called 5-point scale. Okay. So 1 stands for strongly disagree, 2 stands for disagree, 3 stands for neither agree nor disagree, 4 stands for agree, 5 stands for strongly agree. So whatever the respondent feel about the spa hypermarket, they can rate according to that. Okay, so list of items or list of what to say, the statements goes like this. Spa sells high quality merchandise. Okay. Spa has poor in-store service. I like to shop at Spa. Spa charges fair prices. Okay. So you can have number of statements like this related to Spa hypermarket. Okay. For each statement, you call it as an one item. For each item, you have to rate it from 1 to 5. For example, Spa sells high quality merchandise. If at all the respondent feel yes, it is true. Market, uh, uh, the hypermarket uh, sells very high quality goods, then they can rate it as 5 or they can even rate it as 4. Okay, and sometimes you can ask spa has poor in store is poor in store service. Okay, so if at all you have experience with poor service with the hypermarket, you can give the rating as maybe agree or maybe strongly agree, or if at all you are in a dilemma, you have not had experience, they can give it as neither agree nor agree, disagree. That is about the 3 rating. Okay, so this is about Likert scale, and most accepted and widely used scale in the questionnaire is Likert scale. Okay, sometimes you can even have 3-point scale also or 7-point scale also. Okay, so coming to the next type of scale, that is semantic differential scale. Semantic differential scale, also called as SDS, short form as SDS. Here, this is a 7-point rating scale with endpoints associated with bipolar labels. Okay, it will have 7-point rating scales items with each statement will be having the endpoints having bipolar. In the sense, it will have only 2 options, 2 extreme ends that have semantic meaning. Okay, 2 extreme meanings. in a typically application, respondent rate objects on a number of itemized 7-point scale bounded at each end by one of the two bipolar adjectives such as cold and the opposite of it as warm. So respondents mark the blank that best indicates how they would describe the object being rated. Okay, for example, here, first you give the instruction to the respondents, like this part of the study, it measures certain departmental store, means to you by having you judge them on a series of descriptive scales. Okay, please mark X the blank and best indicates how accurately one or the other adjective describes the store, which means to you. Okay, so in the form you can say, you can, for example, if you have taken Big Bazaar as a store which you want to do a study on, you can have number of items, and for each item you can have two bipolar adjectives, two extreme ends. Okay? If at all you say powerful, the other extreme would be weak. Okay, so then they'll be measuring in between these two, they'll be picking, marking the answers. Okay, if at all you say Big Bazaar, it is very unreliable, the other extreme will be reliable. You say the store is very modern or it is very old fashioned. So two extreme adjectives will be given for each item. Okay, so this is called semantic differential scale. Next, coming to the multi-dimensional scaling techniques. Okay. So MDS, short form stands for MDS here. So this is actually a statistical technique for taking the preference and perception of respondents, and the preference and the perceptions will be represented in the visual grid in the form of perceptual maps. Okay. So what happens here is very advanced scaling technique. So here potential customers will be asked to compare the pairs of products here or brands here, and they are asked to make some judgment about their similarity with respect to certain characteristics or certain parameters identified. Okay. Whereas other techniques obtain underlying dimensions from responses, MDS obtains underlying dimensions from respondents' judgment about similarity of the products. Okay, so for example, here, take for example, in a given matrix of perceived similarities between various brands of deodorants. Okay, we are taking Dove, Revlon, Yardley, Eva. Okay, so MDS plots the brands on a map such that these brands that are perceived to be very similar to each other are placed nearby to each other on a map, and those brands that are perceived to be very different from each other are far away placed from each other on the map. In the map, you can see you can have two dimensions here, one with regard to the price, the other one with regard to the fragrance. You can have a mapping, you know, x-axis and y-axis. So on the x-axis you can measure with respect to fragrance, and in the y-axis you can measure with respect to price. Okay, now present the four brands in front of the respondents. So respondents are going to mark these brands wherever they feel like. They're going to map it in this axis. Okay, in this you can see they feel Eva to be, you know, price to be very low, and the fragrance is also very low. Okay, compared to other brands. When it comes to Yardley, they feel it is high price, but the fragrance is mild. In case of Revlon and Dove, they feel the price is also very high and fragrance is also very high, strong. And Dove and Revlon, they have some similar characteristics, so they have placed them nearby. But you can see Yardley and Eva, they have placed far away. So this gives a visual map. Okay, when it is mapped, it gives you a visual analysis. Okay, and this is most complex and advanced scale of measurement. So this is about MDS. And next one is Thurston equal appearing interval scale. Okay. So here what happens, the number of statements on the topic will be collected from people who have wide range of attitudes from extremely favorable to extremely unfavorable. For example, in this example, we will measure the attitude toward action movies. You know action movies. I want to know the attitude of people toward action movies. So you can give the number of statements like action movies are thrilling, action movies make kids courageous, Action movies reduce the boredom of our life. Action movies provoke the kids to perform dangerous action. So you can have a number of statements like this. And uh, now duplicate and irrelevant statements. Once you have collected all the statements, if at all the statements are duplicated or if at all it is not related, those statements are omitted and the rest are typed on a 3 to 5 cards and given to a group of people who will serve as judges. Okay. So originally these judges will be asked to sort out these statements into 11 stacks, okay, representing the entire range of attitude from extremely unfavorable 1 to extremely unfavorable 11. Okay, a stack of 11. So the middle stack is for statements with neither favorable and not unfavorable. So only the end points and the mid points are labeled. So the assumption here is intervening stacks will represent equal steps. Okay. Now, for example, in this, rate each of the following statements indicating the degree to which the statement is unfavorable and favorable to action movies. So you have identified 11 statements. So from 1, as I told you, it is extremely unfavorable. The last 11 is will be favorable statement, and in between statements will be a neutral statement. If at all you feel like action movies are thrilling, yeah, it is favorable, then you can put them in the favorable part, 11, 10, or 9 like this. If at all you feel like, action movies make the kids courageous, if at all you feel it is not relevant, okay, it is an unfavorable statement. This is a negative statement. Okay. Um, Provoke the kids to perform dangerous action means negative statement. It is unfavorable. So you can put it towards unfavorable, one, two, three in the form of. If you say like it makes kids courageous, it is positive statement. You can put it under favorable category. So this is how you're preparing the stack of 11 from extremely unfavorable 1 to extremely favorable 11. Okay, and you are measuring the opinions of the attitudes. Okay, so this is called sorry. So this will be the um, Thurston equal appearing interval scale. These are the different advanced scales. Now coming to the characteristics of good measurement scales. Okay, if at all you say your scaling is a very good measurement scaling technique, you can say based on these characteristics. One is reliability. Okay, to what extent the scale is going to produce you the consistent result if repeated number of times. Okay, maybe test retest reliability or alternate forms reliability. Okay, so reliability means to what extent you can believe in the results. Do you have the consistency, get the consistent results even after you repeat the experiment. Okay, so there should be reliability in the scaling and measuring and validity. Okay, to what extent the differences which are observed in scale scores reflect some true differences among the objects. Okay, you should check for the content validity. You should also evaluate the criterion validity, and you should also evaluate the construct validity. Okay, then possibility. It should address whether the research is possible or not using this particular scaling technique, maybe with related to time constraint or with related to budget, that is the money possibility. Okay. So these are all the criteria for a good measurement. You should see for the reliability, you should check for the validity, and you should also check for the possibility of conducting the research study. So this is all about week 8's discussion. So we have discussed the topics like the measurement and scaling techniques, basic scaling techniques. It is 4 basic scaling techniques: nominal, ordinal, interval ratio, criteria for good measurement, and various attitude measurement like Likert, SDS, MDS, and Thurston scale. So thank you for listening to the session. Um, we'll meet in the week 8, taking the other topics to be covered, discussing on those things.